Every morning, as the sun rises and the world stirs to life, we stand at the threshold of possibility. The day stretches before us, unwritten, waiting for our intention to shape it. In those quiet moments of prayer, we align ourselves not with weakness, but with divine strength, the power that breathes purpose into existence itself. When we call upon God, we awaken something profound within: courage, clarity, and conviction. Psalm 23 reminds us that with God's power, nothing is impossible. Each prayer becomes an act of defiance against despair, a declaration that faith transforms limitation into victory. Morning prayer holds a unique power that goes beyond routine or ritual. It is an intimate act of aligning one's spirit with the divine order of creation. When we begin our day in prayer, we are not merely reciting words. We are centering our thoughts, emotions, and intentions on the highest source of truth and strength. The world awakens with noise, demands, and expectations. But in the early stillness before it all begins, prayer becomes a sacred conversation between the soul and God. It reorients our focus from chaos to clarity, from fear to faith, from uncertainty to purpose. The human mind, left unguarded in the morning, can easily drift into anxiety or distraction. Our thoughts often race toward unfinished tasks, unresolved worries, and unpredictable outcomes. Morning prayer interrupts that cycle and establishes order within the heart. It reminds us that before we act, we must first align. Before we strive, we must surrender. This surrender is not weakness but strength, the recognition that our energy is finite while God's power is infinite. Through prayer, we tap into that endless source, not to escape life's challenges, but to face them with renewed courage and divine perspective. When we pray in the morning, we acknowledge that the day ahead is not solely our responsibility to control, but our opportunity to participate in God's unfolding plan. Each word we speak in prayer carries intention. Each silence between those words invites listening. This discipline of stillness cultivates inner balance. We are often driven by the need to do, achieve, and fix, but prayer trains the heart to rest in the knowledge that we are guided, protected, and empowered by something greater than ourselves. It transforms the ordinary rhythm of waking up into a spiritual recalibration, aligning our will with divine wisdom. Spiritual alignment through morning prayer also reshapes our perception of power. The modern world equates power with dominance, control, and self-sufficiency. Yet in prayer, we discover that true power flows from humility, the recognition of our dependence on God. It is in this humility that we find strength, because humility opens the heart to grace. Grace cannot be earned, it can only be received, and prayer is the vessel through which we make ourselves ready to receive it. When we rise from prayer, we do not rise as the same person who knelt down. We rise with a spirit that has been recalibrated, a mind that has been cleared of noise, and a heart that has been fortified by divine assurance. The alignment that comes from prayer also shapes how we interact with others. When we begin the day anchored in faith, we are less reactive, more compassionate, and more discerning. The frustrations that might have once provoked us lose their grip, because our strength no longer depends on external circumstances. We become instruments of peace rather than participants in conflict. The energy of prayer radiates outward through our words, our actions, and even our presence. Others may not know we prayed that morning, but they will feel its impact in the calm and confidence we carry. Morning prayer, when practiced consistently, builds a foundation of spiritual resilience. It becomes the invisible structure that supports us through uncertainty, disappointment, and trial. Each morning spent in communion with God is a quiet declaration that no matter what comes, we will not face it alone. It is an act of preparation, arming the spirit with faith before the world tests it. Prayer in the morning strengthens the moral compass, steadies the emotions, and renews the mind's capacity for gratitude and grace. It is the moment we choose alignment over chaos, purpose over distraction, and divine partnership over self-reliance. Faith is not merely a belief in something unseen, it is the deep, unshakable conviction that there exists a purpose beyond our understanding and a power greater than our own. It is the quiet assurance that even when circumstances appear bleak, there is a divine order at work, guiding, shaping, and sustaining us. Faith is the foundation upon which true strength is built because it connects human limitation to divine possibility. Without faith, strength becomes brittle, dependent on external validation or temporary success. With faith, strength becomes enduring, rooted not in circumstance but in conviction. There are moments in life when our efforts seem futile, when every door closes and every plan collapses. In those moments, logic alone cannot sustain us. Determination may falter, courage may waver, but faith endures. Faith whispers when the world is silent. It steadies the trembling heart and reminds us that setbacks are not final defeats, but part of a larger narrative of growth. It transforms pain into preparation and waiting into wisdom. Where human strength ends, faith begins, filling the space between despair and hope with divine resilience. Faith does not demand that we understand every detail of the journey. It asks that we trust the one who leads us through it. This trust is not blind submission. It is an active choice to believe in purpose even when clarity is absent. To live by faith is to see beyond appearances, to know that storms do not signify abandonment, but often herald transformation. Faith trains the soul to look beyond the immediate and anchor itself in the eternal. It teaches patience, perseverance, and peace in the midst of uncertainty. True strength is not the absence of weakness, but the mastery of it through faith. When a person of faith faces hardship, they do not crumble because their foundation is not built on emotion or circumstance. Their stability comes from knowing that divine power flows through them, even in their frailty. The Apostle Paul's words, "When I am weak, then I am strong," reflect this paradox. Faith converts weakness into strength by shifting the source of reliance from self to God. It reminds us that we were never meant to carry the weight of the world alone. We were meant to walk in partnership with divine strength. Faith also liberates us from fear, the greatest enemy of strength. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but faith thrives in it too, transforming uncertainty into opportunity. When faith governs the heart, fear loses authority. It is not that fear disappears, but it no longer dictates our actions. Faith gives us the courage to move forward, even when the outcome is unknown. It grants clarity of purpose and steadiness of will, allowing us to act with integrity and confidence regardless of circumstance. This is unstoppable strength, the kind that cannot be broken by adversity or diminished by failure. Every person who has achieved something extraordinary has, at their core, operated on faith. Not necessarily faith in religion alone, but faith in a higher principle, a greater truth, a divine calling. It is this conviction that gives the courage to step into the unknown, to persevere when logic says give up, to believe when evidence says doubt. Faith turns vision into reality because it sustains effort when reason would quit. It fuels perseverance, and perseverance refines character. Faith's power as the foundation of unstoppable strength lies in its constancy. Emotions fluctuate, circumstances shift, but faith remains the anchor that holds us steady. It empowers us to endure suffering without bitterness, to rise after every fall, and to keep moving forward when the path is unclear. This kind of strength cannot be taught through comfort. It is forged in struggle, tested in waiting, and revealed in perseverance. Faith teaches us that strength is not something we possess. It is something we receive and cultivate when we trust that God's power works through us. Psalm 20 stands as a timeless declaration of divine assurance, a reminder that in every season of challenge, we are not left to face the battle alone. Its words are not merely poetic. They are a spiritual anchor for the weary heart, a declaration of trust in God's power to intervene, protect, and deliver. May the Lord answer you when you are in distress. This opening line captures the essence of divine relationship, and that in our times of greatest vulnerability, heaven listens. It acknowledges the reality of distress, but immediately directs our focus toward divine response. The psalm does not deny hardship, it sanctifies it, transforming suffering into an opportunity for God's glory to manifest. The beauty of Psalm 20 lies in its balance between human struggle and divine sovereignty. It was written in the context of battle, a prayer for the king before he went to war. Yet its message transcends the battlefield of history. It speaks to the battles of the human spirit. Life presents each of us with conflicts that test our faith, whether they are external pressures, inner doubts, or moments of loss. Psalm 20 teaches that assurance in such moments does not come from self-reliance, but from divine support. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. This verse dismantles the illusion that human strength or material security can guarantee victory. It points instead to the eternal truth that trust in God is the only foundation that cannot be shaken. Divine assurance does not mean the absence of struggle. It means the presence of purpose within struggle. The psalmist's confidence in God's deliverance stems from the understanding that God's plans extend beyond our immediate perception. When we pray through the words of Psalm 20, we align ourselves with this deeper truth, that God's help is not always given in the form we expect, but always in the form we need. The assurance comes not from predicting outcomes, but from knowing that the outcome, whatever it may be, rests in the hands of a faithful God. This awareness allows the heart to remain steadfast even when circumstances appear uncertain. Every line of Psalm 20 carries a tone of intercession and blessing. It invites us to pray not only for ourselves, but for others, for leaders, loved ones, and communities facing trials. This outward focus is significant because it lifts us beyond self-concern and reminds us of the collective power of faith. When we stand in prayer for one another, we participate in the divine flow of compassion and strength. We become vessels of encouragement, echoing the psalmist's assurance that God will grant victory and fulfill the desires of the heart aligned with His will. Such faith transforms isolation into unity and despair into shared hope. Psalm 20 also reinforces the principle that divine assurance comes through remembrance. The psalmist recalls God's past faithfulness as the foundation for present confidence. Each time we remember how God has carried us through previous storms, our faith gains new strength. Memory becomes a spiritual weapon, a reminder that the same God who delivered before will deliver again. In this way, assurance is cultivated not by ignoring difficulty, but by remembering deliverance. In times of challenge, the heart often seeks control, but Psalm 20 teaches the opposite: to release control and trust divine sovereignty. It is a call to shift from striving to surrender, from anxiety to assurance. The psalm's tone is not desperate but confident. It proclaims victory even before the battle concludes. This is the power of faith, infused assurance, the ability to declare God's triumph while still standing in the midst of trial. It invites us to live not as victims of circumstance, but as participants in divine victory. When the psalm concludes with the affirmation, "Lord, give victory to the King," answer us when we call, it encapsulates the human longing for God's intervention and the confidence that such intervention is certain. It is both a prayer and a proclamation, merging hope with certainty. The believer who holds Psalm 20 close understands that divine assurance is not a distant promise, but a present reality. It reminds us that no battle is too great, no darkness too deep, and no challenge too overwhelming for the power of God to overcome. Transformation through trust in God's plan is one of the deepest spiritual experiences a person can undergo. It is not an event, but a continual process, a journey that reshapes the heart, mind, and soul. Trusting God's plan means surrendering the illusion of control and embracing the mystery of divine timing. It requires faith not only when the path is clear, but especially when it is obscured. In those uncertain seasons, transformation begins not in the moments of comfort, but in the moments of surrender, where we release our grip on how we think life should unfold and allow God to lead us toward what He has already prepared. Human nature craves predictability and control. We make plans, set goals, and measure progress according to visible results. Yet life rarely follows our expectations. Disappointments, delays, and detours can easily lead to frustration or doubt. But from a divine perspective, these moments are not interruptions. They are instruments. God uses them to refine us, to stretch our faith, and to align our character with His greater purpose. Trusting His plan means recognizing that what we perceive as obstacles may actually be opportunities for growth, preparation, and deeper dependence on Him. Transformation occurs when our perspective shifts from asking why is this happening to me, to what is God teaching me through this? When we trust in God's plan, we learn that transformation is often hidden in waiting. Waiting is not passive. It is an active discipline of faith. It teaches patience, humility, and resilience. During these periods, God works within us in ways that are invisible but essential. He molds our desires, strengthens our convictions, and deepens our peace. What we think is silence from God may actually be preparation, a divine pause designed to build the spiritual strength necessary for the next stage of our journey. Every delay holds purpose, and every unanswered prayer carries within it the seed of transformation. Trust also requires releasing the need for understanding. The human mind seeks explanations, but divine wisdom often operates beyond comprehension. Proverbs reminds us, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This is not a call to ignorance, but to humility. To acknowledge that our perspective is limited while God's is infinite. When we learn to rest in that truth, fear begins to lose its power. The more we trust, the more we find peace, not because the circumstances have changed, but because our hearts have. This inner transformation is the essence of spiritual maturity, the ability to remain steadfast in faith even when the outcome is unseen. Transformation through trust also reshapes our relationship with failure. What we label as failure is often God's redirection. Trust teaches us that every closed door is an act of protection, every disappointment a step towards something greater. We begin to see that God's plan is not to deprive us of what we desire, but to prepare us for what we are destined to receive. In this awareness, the soul finds freedom from anxiety, resentment, and doubt. We stop clinging to our own agendas and start walking with open hands, ready to receive whatever God ordains. Over time, this trust becomes a transformative power that radiates into every aspect of life. It changes how we respond to adversity, how we treat others, and how we view success. A person who trusts deeply in God's plan no longer needs to force outcomes or prove worth. Their confidence rests in divine purpose. Such trust produces peace amid uncertainty, courage amid fear, and gratitude amid pain. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who we were always meant to be under God's guidance. Through every test and trial, trust chisels away the excess, pride, fear, impatience, until only faith remains unshakable and pure. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that shapes human behavior. It can paralyze potential, silence truth, and cloud vision. Yet, fear is not meant to dominate the human spirit. It is meant to be mastered. The path to overcoming fear does not lie in denial or avoidance, but in connection, a deep alignment with divine purpose. When we understand that our lives are not random, that every moment carries meaning within God's greater plan, fear begins to lose its authority. Divine purpose gives fear a context. It transforms what was once a source of anxiety into an instrument of growth. Every individual faces fear in some form. Fear of failure, rejection, loss, or the unknown. These fears often arise from a belief that we must navigate life's challenges alone. But the moment we invoke divine purpose, the foundation of fear starts to crumble. We remember that we are guided, equipped, and protected by a higher power. Fear thrives in separation, but it cannot survive in the presence of faith. When we invite God into our fear, we shift the narrative from, "What if I fail?" to, "What if God uses this for something greater?" This shift does not remove the difficulty, but redefines it. It gives us the courage to act, even when uncertainty remains. Invoking divine purpose means recognizing that every challenge carries within it a divine lesson. What appears as a setback may actually be preparation for something greater. God does not waste pain, He refines through it. Fear then becomes a signal not of danger, but of opportunity. It alerts us to areas where faith must grow stronger. When we surrender fear to divine will, we discover a deeper resilience, a confidence that is not self-made but God-given. We begin to move from panic to purpose, from hesitation to conviction. The power of divine purpose lies in its ability to anchor the soul. A person who knows their purpose cannot be easily shaken by fear, because their focus is higher than their circumstances. They understand that fear is temporary, but purpose is eternal. Even when fear whispers doubts into the mind, purpose speaks louder through faith. This alignment allows us to act boldly, not because we are fearless, but because we are faithful. True courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it, trusting that God's hand is guiding every step. Throughout history, every great act of faith has been born from a moment when fear was overcome by divine calling. Moses stood before Pharaoh despite his doubts. David faced Goliath with only a sling and unshakable trust. These stories endure not because fear was absent, but because purpose triumphed. When we too align with divine purpose, we tap into that same source of strength. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer dictates our choices. The heart anchored in divine intent learns to say, "I will not be afraid, for God is with me." Invoking divine purpose also changes how we view risk. What once seemed dangerous or uncertain becomes sacred ground for growth. Every step of faith is an act of defiance against fear, a declaration that we trust divine wisdom more than human understanding. The moment we choose to walk in purpose, fear begins to diminish. It cannot coexist with a heart that is fully surrendered to God's will. In the end, overcoming fear is not about erasing emotion, but transforming it. Fear becomes fuel for faith, a catalyst for deeper dependence on God. Each time we face fear and choose trust, our character is strengthened, our vision is clarified, and our spirit draws closer to divine truth. The more we align with God's purpose, the more fearless we become, not because the world changes, but because we do. What once intimidated us becomes a testimony of God's power working through us, the proof that divine purpose is stronger than any fear that seeks to hold us back. To live each day as a testimony of God's power is to walk with the awareness that every breath, every step, and every moment is a divine opportunity to reveal His presence through our lives. It is not about perfection, but about reflection, allowing our actions, words, and attitudes to mirror the strength and grace of the One who sustains us. Each new day offers a canvas upon which faith can be painted, a stage upon which God's power can be demonstrated through ordinary people doing extraordinary things by His guidance. When we live this way, our existence becomes more than survival. It becomes a message of hope, resilience, and transformation. Living as a testimony of God's power begins with gratitude. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we've been given, and that awareness opens our hearts to the divine presence in every circumstance. Even in difficulty, gratitude reminds us that God's power is not confined to comfort, but is revealed most clearly in our perseverance. Each morning we wake is evidence of His sustaining hand. Each challenge we overcome bears witness to His strength working through our weakness. When gratitude becomes our posture, life ceases to be random and becomes purposeful, an unfolding narrative of God's continual faithfulness. To live as a testimony also requires humility. A life that reflects God's power is not self-glorifying, but God-centered. Humility acknowledges that we are instruments, not sources of strength. The world often teaches self-reliance and pride, but divine power flows most freely through those who yield to it. When we act in humility, we create space for grace to operate. Others see not our achievements, but the divine hand guiding them. This quiet surrender allows God to work through us in ways far beyond our own capability, turning even our smallest acts of kindness or obedience into demonstrations of His power and love. Faith in action is another essential element of a life that testifies to God's power. Words alone are not enough. Faith must be lived. This means showing integrity when it's easier to compromise, choosing compassion over indifference, and standing firm in truth even when it's unpopular. When others see a person who lives with conviction, anchored in divine confidence, they encounter a glimpse of God's strength in human form. Our faith becomes visible through how we handle adversity, how we treat others, and how we remain steadfast when life's storms rage. It is in these moments that God's power is most vividly revealed. Each day presents opportunities to embody divine power in simple yet profound ways. When we forgive instead of retaliate, when we speak encouragement instead of criticism, when we choose peace over anger, we testify to the transformative work of God within us. These actions may seem small, but they ripple outward, influencing hearts and inspiring faith in others. The most powerful testimony is not found in grand gestures, but in consistent faithfulness. The quiet strength of a person who trusts God daily, even when no one is watching. Living as a testimony also means embracing trials as part of God's divine narrative. Hardship, and though painful, often becomes the clearest platform for displaying His power. When we endure suffering with faith, when we rise after failure, when we maintain joy amid uncertainty, we show the world that God's presence is real and His strength is sufficient. Others who witness such endurance are drawn not to our resilience alone, but to the divine source behind it. Through us, they see that God is not distant, but active, shaping, empowering, and sustaining His people in every season of life. Ultimately, living each day as a testimony of God's power means recognizing that every encounter, every decision, and every challenge is an opportunity to reveal His glory. Our lives, imperfect yet redeemed, become living proof that divine strength triumphs over human limitation. Each day we choose faith over fear, gratitude over complaint, and love over resentment. We declare, not through words alone, but through the essence of our being, that God's power is alive, present, and victorious within us.